11:45 p.m. My phone lit up the dark room with a single notification. A forwarded bill from the Zenith Lounge. $15,000. The total glowed on the screen like an accusation. Below it was a text from my mother, Sandra. Just put this on your card. It's the least you can do after ruining the mood with your cheap dress. A second later, a heart emoji popped up. My sister, Tiffany. He liked the message. I sat there in the quiet hum of my home office, surrounded by monitors that tracked global market trends and hotel acquisitions. I didn't cry. I didn't throw the phone. I just stared at the screen. They truly believed I was their ATM. They thought my silence was permission. But silence isn't always agreement. Sometimes it's just the quiet before the execution. Drop a comment and let me know where you're listening from and what time it is for you right now. I'd love to know who's part of our community. I didn't reply to the text. I didn't send an angry emoji. Instead, I opened my laptop. The screen hummed to life, casting a blue light over my hands. To my family, these hands were only good for shelving books at the public library or pouring wine for my father's business partners. They had no idea these same hands controlled a boutique hotel empire spanning 3 continents. I bypassed my work email and logged into my private investment backend. 2-factor authentication. Retinal scan. The dashboard loaded. I scrolled past the real estate portfolios and the tech stocks until I found a folder buried deep in the archives. It was labeled simply, Family Debt Consolidation. I clicked it open. It wasn't just a file, it was a graveyard of their mistakes. There were the receipts for my father's gambling debts from 2018, bought for pennies on the dollar from loan sharks who were threatening to break his legs. There were the credit card statements my mother had maxed out on designer handbags she couldn't afford, consolidated into a low-interest loan I managed personally. There was the lease on the luxury condo Tiffany lived in, paid for by a shell company I owned. For years I had been the silent architect of their safety. I had been catching them before they hit the ground over and over again. And looking at the numbers tonight, I finally asked myself the question I had been avoiding for a decade. But it wasn't love. It was something far more insidious. It was the invisible chain of the survivor. When you grow up in a house where affection is a limited resource, you start to believe that love is a transaction. You convince yourself that if you just pay enough, if you endure enough, if you fix enough of their messes, eventually they will look at you and see a daughter instead of a utility. You build your own prison without bars. You tell yourself that your usefulness is the only thing keeping you inside the family. You think you are being a good daughter, but really, you are just a hostage paying your own ransom, hoping the kidnappers will eventually decide to love you. But tonight, staring at that $15,000 dinner bill, the chain snapped. I realized that no amount of money would ever be enough. The ransom had no limit. I could buy them the moon and they would complain that it was too bright. My compassion hadn't been a gift. It had been a subscription they had overdrafted for years. And tonight, their subscription had expired. I navigated to the submenu labeled, Housing Allowance, Jeffrey and Sandra. The status bar glowed green, Auto-renew active. I didn't hesitate. I didn't shake. My finger hovered over the trackpad. This wasn't revenge. This was accounting. It was a correction of a market error. I clicked cancel. The screen flashed. Are you sure? I clicked confirm. The status bar turned red. Terminated. I did the same for the credit cards. Terminated. I did the same for Tiffany's car lease. Terminated. One by one, I turned off the lights in their financial lives. It took less than 3 minutes to dismantle the safety net I had spent 6 years weaving. When I was done, the total balance due flashed on the screen. $5.2 million. That was what they owed me. And that was what I was going to collect. I closed the laptop and turned around. In the dim light of the bedroom, I could see the outline of Caleb sleeping. He shifted, reaching out an arm to the empty space where I should have been. He was the only one who knew. He knew I wasn't a librarian. He knew I wasn't weak. He knew that beneath the quiet cardigans and the silence, I was a shark. He had begged me months ago to stop funding them. He had told me they would never change. I hadn't listened then because I was still wearing the invisible chain. But I wasn't wearing it anymore. I walked back to the bed and slid under the covers. My heart was beating slow and steady. There was no guilt. There was only the cold, sharp clarity of the morning to come. They wanted a reaction? They were going to get a foreclosure. 7 a.m. The sun hadn't even fully crested over the Los Angeles skyline when the assault began. My phone vibrated against the marble countertop of the kitchen island. It wasn't a gentle wake-up call. It was a barrage. 17 missed calls. 42 text messages. And now the phone was ringing again. It was Sandra. I answered, putting it on speaker so I could pour my coffee. I didn't say hello. I didn't need to. You ungrateful, spiteful little brat. Her voice screeched through the speaker so loud it distorted. Do you have any idea what you just did? Do you have any concept of the humiliation? I took a sip of the dark roast. Good morning, mother. I assume the bill wasn't settled to your satisfaction. Settled? Settled. She was hyperventilating. The card was declined, Mina. Declined. In front of the entire staff. In front of Bryce. We tried to put it on your father's platinum card and the machine literally laughed at us. The manager came over. He looked at us like we were criminals. Do you know what it feels like to have a waiter pity you? I knew exactly what it felt like. I had felt it every time I wore my thrift store clothes to their gala dinners. I had felt it every time they introduced me as the quiet one, while Tiffany preened for the cameras. It sounds like a cash flow problem, I said, my voice flat. Perhaps you should have checked your balance before ordering the $12,000 vintage. Don't you dare lecture me on finance, she screamed. You cut us off. I know you did. I tried to use the emergency fund for the Uber home and it was gone. You stranded us there. Bryce had to call his mother to Venmo him money for a cab. Bryce. He's an influencer, Mina. He knows people. If this gets out, if people find out we couldn't pay a dinner bill, we are ruined. That was it. Not we missed you. Not why are you doing this. Just the panic of a stage actor who realizes the spotlight has been cut and the audience can finally see the cheap plywood of the set. Fix this, she demanded. Transfer the money right now. And apologize to Tiffany. She's been crying all night. You ruined her networking opportunity. I hung up. I didn't block her. Not yet. I needed the data. I needed to see just how deep the rot went. I opened Instagram. Sure enough, there was Tiffany's story posted 3 hours ago. A black screen with tiny white text, accompanied by a sad acoustic song. It's crazy how the people closest to you are the ones who want to see you fail the most. Some people just can't handle your shine, so they try to cut your power. Jealousy is a disease. Get well soon, sis. Hashtag toxic family, hashtag rising above, hashtag haters gonna hate. I almost laughed. The gaslighting was breathtaking. She had reframed my refusal to be robbed as an act of jealousy. She truly believed that my existence revolved around envying her ability to take selfies. Then came the voicemail from my father, Jeffrey. I played it. His voice was thick, slurring slightly. He'd been drinking. Mina. You listen to me. I know who put you up to this. It's that husband of yours. That substitute teacher nobody. He's in your ear, isn't he? Telling you to hold out on your family? He's a leech, Mina. A parasite. He sees a little bit of money in your account and he wants it for himself. You're letting a stranger destroy your bloodline. You fix this, or so help me God, I will come down there and remind you who made you. I looked over at Caleb. He was sitting at the table reading a tech journal on his tablet. He wasn't a substitute teacher. He was the founder of a learning platform valued at $900 million. He had bought my father's gambling debts anonymously 3 times just to keep my childhood home from being firebombed by bookies. He was the only reason they still had a roof over their heads, and they called him a leech. Caleb looked up, hearing the venom in the voicemail. He didn't get angry. He just looked at me with a sad, knowing smile. They're not mad that they lost the money, he said softly. They're mad that they lost their power over you. He was right. For years they had operated on a simple premise. I was the resource and they were the management. Resources don't have opinions. Resources don't have boundaries. And resources certainly don't turn off the tap. But I wasn't a resource anymore. I was the chief executive officer of my own life. And I had just identified a massive liability. I deleted the voicemail. I didn't respond to the text. I didn't engage with the Instagram drama. To them, this was an emotional war. They wanted a fight. They wanted me to scream back so they could call me hysterical. They wanted me to defend myself so they could twist my words. But I wasn't going to fight. I was going to liquidate. I stood up and smoothed down my blazer. It was time to go to work. Not to the library, but to the glass-walled office downtown where my real name was on the door. Are you ready? Caleb asked. No, I said, grabbing my keys. I'm overdue. I didn't block their numbers. Blocking them would have been emotional. It would have been a reaction. I needed to be proactive. I silenced the notifications and got into my car. I drove past the public library on 4th Street. That was where my family thought I worked. For 5 years, I had let them believe I spent my days stamping due dates and organizing the Dewey Decimal System. It was a convenient fiction. It made me unthreatening. It made me safe to bully because in their minds, a librarian didn't have the resources to fight back. I didn't stop at the library. I drove 3 blocks west to the glass and steel skyscraper that dominated the skyline. I pulled into the underground garage, bypassing the visitor lot and sliding into the spot marked reserved. CO. Taking the private elevator up to the 42nd floor, I felt the shift happen in my body. The hunched shoulders of the dutiful daughter straightened. The apologetic expression vanished. I wasn't Mina the disappointment anymore. I was Mina the majority shareholder. The doors opened directly into the lobby of MV Holdings. The receptionist nodded as I walked past. Good morning, Ms. Vane. Elena is waiting for you in conference room B. Elena was my attorney. She wasn't a family lawyer who handed out tissues and talked about reconciliation. She was a corporate shark who specialized in hostile takeovers and asset liquidation. She didn't deal in feelings, she dealt in leverage. I walked into the conference room. Elena was already there, a stack of files arranged on the mahogany table with military precision. I saw the transaction logs, Elena said, not looking up from her tablet. You terminated the housing allowance. Aggressive. It wasn't aggressive enough, I said, taking the seat at the head of the table. They think this is a tantrum. They think I'm just holding my breath until they apologize. I need them to understand that the bank is closed. Permanently. Elena slid a document toward me. Then we don't send a letter. We send a notice of debt acceleration. I looked at the paperwork. It wasn't a Dear Dad note. It was a legal demand. It outlined every loan I had purchased, every credit card balance I had consolidated, every car lease I had underwritten. The terms of those loans had always been soft. Pay when you can. 0 interest. Family terms. But there was a clause in the fine print, a clause Elena had insisted on years ago. The lender reserves the right to demand full repayment of the principal balance at any time for any reason. The total principal is $5,200,000, Elena said. If we execute this, they have 30 days to pay the full amount. If they fail to pay, we move to asset seizure. We take the house. We take the cars. We garnish any wages they might actually have. I ran my finger over the figure. $5 million. That was the price tag of my silence. That was what it had cost to keep them comfortable while they treated me like a servant. Do it, I said. Draft it. Serve them tomorrow. This is the nuclear option, Mina, Elena warned, her voice devoid of judgment, just stating facts. Once you send this, there is no going back to Sunday dinners. You aren't their daughter anymore. You are their creditor. I haven't been their daughter for a long time, I replied. I've just been their sponsor. My phone buzzed on the table. It was a text from Caleb. I just got a voicemail from your dad. He threatened to come to my school and get me fired. He called me a broke loser who is corrupting his daughter. I stared at the message. They were attacking Caleb now. They were going after the only person who had ever loved me without conditions. Caleb sent a second text. Take the gloves off, Mina. Drop the veil. Let them see who we really are. He gave me the signal. For years we had concealed his wealth to protect his dignity and our peace, but they mistook humility for weakness. I instructed Elena to send the courier package on company letterhead and redirect all correspondence to my office. I wanted them to see the logo and understand exactly who they had provoked. Somewhere my parents were already raging. I was done managing their emotions. I had a business to run. Then Elena paused. It wasn't an asset, it was a liability. A second mortgage from 3 years ago, taken out on the family home for $250,000. I hadn't authorized it. The co-signer's signature bore my name. It was a perfect forgery. But on the signing date I was in Tokyo. My father had forged my signature, using my credit to fund Tiffany's so-called success. Dubai trips, a G-Wagon, a fantasy life financed by fraud. If he had defaulted, the bank would have come for me. This wasn't a civil matter. It was bank fraud and aggravated identity theft. Federal prison. Mandatory minimums. I didn't flinch. I told Elena to prepare the police report, but hold it. I needed an admission. Public. Irreversible. I invited them to dinner at the Zenith Lounge. They arrived arrogant, overdressed, convinced this was my surrender. They ordered extravagantly, assuming I would pay. When the check came, it didn't go to me, it went to Caleb. The waiter addressed him by name and asked him to review deed transfer documents. Caleb signed casually. The bill went to the house account. That was when it landed. We owned the building. The restaurant. The view. I slid a folder across the table. A notice of debt acceleration. They owed me $5.2 million payable in 30 days. Beneath it was the forged loan application. I told them plainly, I hadn't reported it yet. They would avoid prison, but they would lose everything else. Tiffany's influencer boyfriend left immediately. Status evaporated fast without money behind it. 30 days later they defaulted. I sent the eviction crew. Watching them move into a walk-up they once mocked, I understood their arrogance had always been rented. Without possessions there was nothing underneath. We sold the house and donated every dollar of recovered equity to a scholarship fund for first-generation students, turning greed into opportunity. I deleted the last remaining folder tied to them and closed my laptop. For the first time, the prison door was quiet, but unlocked. If you've ever had to buy your own freedom from the people who should have given it freely, you're not alone.